The massive council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy took their seats. Ambassador Kim Hanna sat calmly in the human section, her dark eyes scanning the room with practiced patience. She had attended hundreds of these meetings over the past decade, but today felt different. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The Council will now hear the formal complaint against the Terran Federation, announced Councilor Prime Tidlak, his blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. His voice carried a sharp edge that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. Kim Hanna already knew what was coming. 3 weeks ago, her people had stopped a brutal war between mining corporations on Kepler 442b. The Terran Peacekeeping Force, led by Captain Park Mio, had moved swiftly to end the conflict before thousands of innocent workers died in the crossfire. They had done their job exactly as they always did, efficiently, effectively, and with minimal casualties. But apparently, that was no longer good enough. The Zephyrian representative stood tall, his multiple arms gesturing dramatically as he spoke. The humans use excessive force, he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. They destroyed private property worth millions of credits. They arrested corporate executives without proper trials. They acted like conquerors, not peacekeepers. Kim Hanna wanted to laugh. Excessive force? Her people had prevented a massacre. The mining dispute had been escalating for months, with both sides arming their workers and threatening to destroy each other's facilities. When the Terran fleet arrived, they found corporate mercenaries preparing for all-out war. Captain Park's forces had disabled the weapons, arrested the ringleaders, and restored order within 6 hours. 0 casualties. But the corporations had deep pockets and powerful friends in council. They wanted compensation for their losses, and the council was listening. One by one, other representatives stood to voice their concerns. The Vorthans complained about human military tactics being too aggressive. The Crystallants worried about human technology being too advanced. The Hive Queen's representative claimed humans were too independent in their decision-making. Kim Hanna listened to it all with growing disgust. For 3 centuries, humanity had served this council faithfully. They had stopped wars, prevented genocides, and maintained peace across thousands of worlds. They had shared their technology, their medical knowledge, and their expertise freely. And now they were being criticized for being too good at their job. When the formal vote came, Kim Hanna was not surprised by the result. The council voted to censure humanity and strip them of their military authority in the Outer Rim territories. The same territories where human peacekeepers had prevented 17 major conflicts in the past 5 years alone. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the human delegation. Kim Hanna stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. She had been preparing for this moment since the complaints first started arriving 6 months ago. Her government had given her clear instructions on what to do if this day ever came. The Terran Federation has served this council with honor and dedication for over 300 years, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. We have asked for nothing in return except a chance to help maintain peace and prosperity for all species. She paused, letting her words sink in. Several representatives looked uncomfortable now, perhaps realizing the gravity of what they had just done. However, Kim Hanna continued, it appears our services are no longer valued or wanted. Therefore, the Terran Federation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the chamber erupted in chaos as representatives began shouting questions and demands. But Kim Hanna was already walking toward the exit, followed by every member of the human delegation. They moved with military precision, their faces showing no emotion as they filed out of the chamber that had been their second home for centuries. Behind them, Councilor Prime Tidlak was banging his gavel desperately, trying to restore order. "Wait," he called out. "We can discuss this. The vote can be reconsidered." But the humans were already gone. Within hours, something unprecedented began happening across Council space. Every human ship, every human facility, every human citizen began preparing for departure. It was not a panicked evacuation or an angry storm out. It was the most organized, methodical withdrawal in galactic history. Captain Park Miho coordinated from the Orbital Command Center above New Damascus, his calm voice directing hundreds of ships and thousands of personnel. Dr. Lee Sora supervised a careful shutdown of the fusion reactors she had designed for crystalline worlds. Commander Choi Jaiwin transferred all medical records and research data to local authorities before closing the hospitals her teams had built. The council representatives watched in growing alarm as the reality of the situation became clear. The humans were not just leaving in anger, they were leaving completely. Every piece of human technology was being carefully removed or disabled. Every human-trained local was being given hasty crash courses in maintaining systems they had never fully understood. As the last human transport ships disappeared into hyperspace, the galaxy suddenly felt much larger and much more dangerous than it had just 24 hours before. 6 weeks had passed since the humans walked out, and Counselor Prime Titlak was beginning to understand what a terrible mistake they had made. The first signs of trouble appeared within days of the withdrawal, but he had dismissed them as minor growing pains. Now, staring at the emergency reports flooding his desk, he realized the galaxy was falling apart. The border dispute between the Andromedans and Centaurians had exploded into open warfare. For 200 years, these two species had hated each other with a passion that burned like a dying star. The only thing that kept them from destroying each other was Captain Park Mio and his peacekeeping fleet, who patrolled the disputed zones and stopped fights before they could start. Without the human peacekeepers, both sides had immediately begun moving warships toward the border. The first battle happened 3 weeks after the withdrawal. 12 ships were destroyed in the opening exchange, with hundreds of casualties on both sides. Now, entire star systems were mobilizing for war. Why didn't we think of this? Titlak muttered himself as he read the battle reports. The answer was simple and humiliating. They had never needed to think about it. The humans had handled everything so smoothly that the council had forgotten these problems existed. The communication panel on his desk chimed with an urgent message from the Hive Queen of Regulus. Her insectoid face appeared on the screen, mandibles clicking with agitation. "The pirates struck again," she buzzed angrily. 3 more merchant ships destroyed. Cargo worth millions stolen. Where are the patrol ships? Where's the protection we were promised? Titlak had no answer to give her. The Council's own security forces consisted of 20 outdated patrol ships and a few hundred guards who were better suited for directing traffic than fighting pirates. For generations, they had relied on human ships to handle real threats. The pirates knew this too, and they were getting bolder with each passing day. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries were now hunting grounds for criminals and raiders. The carefully maintained shipping schedules that kept the galactic economy running were falling apart as merchant captains refused to travel without military escorts that no longer existed. But the worst news was coming from New Damascus, the industrial world that powered half the Council's economy. Dr. Lee Sora had spent 15 years designing and installing the automated systems that kept the planet running. Her fusion reactors provided clean energy for billions of inhabitants. Her atmospheric processors kept the air breathable. Her quantum computers managed everything from traffic control to food distribution. Now, those systems were failing, one by one. Engineer Nam Hyok had worked closely with the native crystalline population, training them to maintain the human-built equipment. But Nam was gone now, along with all his technical manuals and diagnostic tools. The crystallines were intelligent beings, but their thought processes were completely different from humans. What seemed logical and simple to a human engineer was mysterious and confusing to them. The first power plant went offline 2 weeks ago. The backup systems kicked in automatically, but those were failing too. Without someone who understood human engineering principles, the crystallines could only watch helplessly as their civilization slowly shut down. "We tried calling the human technical support lines," reported Administrator Quell from New Damascus, her crystalline body flickering with stress patterns. "But all the numbers have been disconnected. We found some instruction manuals, but they might as well be written in an alien language. We don't understand how any of this works." Titlak closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. The crystallines were not stupid. They had been advanced enough to join the Council centuries ago. But human technology was so far ahead of everyone else that even brilliant alien engineers could not figure out without proper training. The pattern was repeating itself across dozens of worlds. Automated factories were shutting down because nobody knew how to repair them. Medical equipment built by human doctors was failing, leaving hospitals unable to treat patients. Communication networks designed by human technicians were experiencing massive failures. On Vega Prime, the water purification systems had stopped working completely. The local population was boiling river water to make it safe to drink, something they had not needed to do for over a century. On Tau Ceti, the orbital defense platforms that protected the planet from asteroids had gone offline, leaving 4 billion inhabitants vulnerable to cosmic impacts. The Council tried to hire independent contractors to fix the problems, but most of them took one look at human technology and walked away. Those who were brave enough to try usually made things worse. A well-meaning Vorthan engineer accidentally caused a cascade failure that knocked out power to an entire continent when he tried to restart a fusion reactor. Economic coordinator Kong Mira had designed the financial networks that kept credits flowing between star systems. Without her algorithms managing the currency exchanges, the galactic economy was experiencing wild swings that wiped out fortunes overnight. Several major banks had already collapsed, and more were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Tejlak stood up and walked to the window of his office, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so peaceful and orderly. In just 6 weeks, the humans had shown him a terrifying truth. The entire galactic civilization had become completely dependent on human knowledge and human systems. And now they were gone, leaving the rest of the galaxy to discover just how much they had relied on the species they had just thrown away. 3 months had passed since the humans walked away, and the galaxy was dying. Council Prime Titlak stared at the holographic display, showing red warning lights across hundreds of star systems. Each light represented a crisis that was spiraling out of control, and new ones appeared every hour. The economic collapse had reached the core systems now. Kong Myra's financial networks, which had managed a flow of credits between thousands of worlds, were completely broken. Without her carefully designed algorithms, the currency exchange systems could not handle even simple transactions. Banks were failing daily, and entire planets were running out of money to buy basic supplies like food and medicine. On Altair 7, riots had broken out when the automated food distribution centers stopped working. The local government had no idea how to restart the systems that fed 40 million people. Grocery stores sat empty while massive food processing plants stood idle, their human-designed machinery too complex for anyone else to operate. T.H. Lack's assistant, a nervous young Andromedian named Crix, rushed into the office with another stack of emergency reports. "Sir, we just received word from the Vorthan Empire. The situation has gotten much worse." The Vorthan Empire had ruled their sector of space for over 2,000 years without a single military defeat. Their warriors were legendary, their fleets were massive, and their pride was infinite. They had been among the loudest voices calling for humanity's removal from military operations, claiming that aliens should handle their own problems. Now they were learning why the humans had been so valuable. General Vextar appeared on the communication screen, his usually proud features twisted with desperation. Behind him, T.H. Lack could see smoke rising from burning buildings. "The Machine Collective has taken 3 more worlds," Vextar reported, his voice strained. "Our traditional battle formations are useless against their adaptive tactics. They learn from every engagement and adjust their strategies in real time. The Nexus, a collective of artificial intelligences that have been quiet for decades, had chosen this moment to launch a massive expansion. They had watched human military tactics for years, studying how Captain Park and his officers countered their probing attacks. Now, without human strategic advisors, the Nexus was free to test new approaches. Vorthan battle doctrine had not changed in centuries. Their ships flew in predictable formations, their warriors followed ancient honor codes, and their commanders made decisions based on traditions passed down through generations. Against human-trained enemies who adapted and evolved with each battle, these old methods were worse than useless. "We need help," Vextar admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. "Our fleets are being destroyed. Our worlds are being conquered. The machines are using human tactical principles against us, but we never learned how to counter them." T.H. Lack had no help to offer. The Council's own military forces were stretched thin trying to handle the dozens of other crises erupting across their territory. Pirates were raiding shipping lanes with impunity. Border disputes were escalating into full wars. Separatist movements were declaring independence on worlds that had been loyal for centuries. But the worst news came from Dr. Shin Yuna's former research station on Epsilon Eridani. The plague that she and Commander Choi Jaiwan had contained for 50 years had broken free. Dr. Yuna had been the galaxy's leading expert on cross-species diseases. She understood how viruses and bacteria could jump between different alien biologies, something that most doctors never even studied. Her research station monitored dozens of dangerous pathogens, keeping them safely locked away while developing treatments and vaccines. When the humans withdrew, they had tried to transfer responsibility to local medical authorities. But the handover had been rushed, and the local doctors did not understand the complex containment procedures that Dr. Yuna's team had developed over decades. The breach started small, just one contaminated sample that was not properly secured. But this particular virus was one that Dr. Yuna had been most worried about. It could infect 12 different species and mutated rapidly as it spread. Within days, it had escaped the laboratory. Within weeks, it had reached 6 different worlds. Dr. Plexrim, a crystalline physician who had worked alongside human doctors for years, contacted Tejlak with panic in his voice. "We don't know how to stop it," he admitted. "This virus behaves unlike anything in our medical databases. It changes its structure every time we develop a treatment." Dr. Yuna's notes mentioned something called adaptive RNA sequences, but we can't understand what she meant. The plague was spreading faster than anyone could track it. Quarantine procedures that work for single-species diseases were useless against something that could infect multiple alien biologies. Trade ships were unknowingly carrying the virus between star systems, and by the time symptoms appeared, it was too late to stop the spread. 14 systems were now under medical emergency protocols, with billions of beings either infected or at risk. Hospitals were overwhelmed, governments were collapsing, and entire species were facing potential extinction. Tejlak sank into his chair as another urgent message appeared on his screen. The proud Alterian Federation, which had existed for 800 years, was formally requesting membership in the human-controlled territories. They would rather surrender their independence than continue dealing with the chaos that the Council could no longer manage. As he watched his carefully ordered galaxy tear itself apart, Tejlak finally understood the true scope of their mistake. They had not just lost their peacekeepers and problem solvers when they forced humanity out. They had lost the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. 8 months after the humans walked away, Counselor Prime Tejlak found himself doing something he never thought possible, drafting a formal apology. His proud blue fingers trembled as he typed the words that would humiliate him and his entire species for generations to come. The galaxy was burning. Half of the Council's member species were at war with each other. 37 worlds faced complete infrastructure collapse. The plague that had escaped from Epsilon Eridani was now spreading through 43 star systems, killing billions. The economic networks had failed so completely that some planets had returned to using precious metals for trade. Worst of all, 3 more species had formally requested to join human territory in the past month. The Alterian Federation had been the first, but now the crystallines of New Damascus and even some Vorthan colony worlds were begging the humans to take them in. They would rather give up their independence than continue living in the chaos that the Council could no longer control. Send another transmission to Earth. Tejlak ordered his assistant Crix. Official channels, maximum priority. Crix looked uncomfortable. "Sir, this will be the 47th attempt. They haven't responded to any of our messages. Human space has gone completely dark. No diplomatic communications, no trade requests, no emergency broadcasts. It's like they've cut themselves off in the entire galaxy." Tejlak knew this already, but he had to keep trying. The alternative was watching galactic civilization collapse completely. Send it anyway. Maybe this time. But deep down, he knew the humans were not ignoring them by accident. They had made a choice to shut out the galaxy that had rejected them. And why shouldn't they? The Council had treated humanity like troublesome employees who could be fired at will. Now, they were discovering that those employees had been holding everything together. After 3 more failed attempts to contact Earth, Tajlak made a desperate decision. If official channels would not work, he would try unofficial ones. He gathered a small team of diplomats and loaded them onto his personal ship for a secret mission to the edge of human space. The journey took 2 weeks through increasingly dangerous territory. Pirates attacked them twice, forcing Tajlak's small escort to fight running battles just to survive. They passed through systems where entire civilizations were failing, their lights growing dim as infrastructure collapsed and populations fled. When they finally reached the border of human territory, Tajlak was shocked by what he saw. The space that had once been considered a dangerous frontier was now filled with activity. Massive construction projects were underway around several star systems. Strange new ships with unfamiliar designs patrolled the borders in organized formations. But most surprising of all, the humans did not seem to be struggling without the Council. If anything, they appeared to be thriving. Tajlak's ship was intercepted by a sleek patrol vessel that looked unlike any human design he had seen before. The technology was clearly advanced beyond anything the Council possessed. When they requested permission to enter human space, they were politely but firmly directed to a frontier outpost on the edge of the territory. Governor Han Jisoo met them at the small diplomatic facility. Tajlak remembered her as a junior trade official who used to handle shipping schedules between human and Zephyrian worlds. Now she wore the uniform of a regional administrator, and her manner was confident and professional. "Counselor Prime Tajlak," she said with a polite smile. "This is unexpected. I wasn't aware that the Council maintained diplomatic relations with the Terran Federation." The subtle insult hit home. Tajlak had to swallow his pride before responding. "Governor Han, I come seeking urgent assistance. The galaxy faces multiple crises that threaten billions of lives. We need human expertise to help stabilize the situation." Han listened patiently as Tajlak explained the disasters that had befallen Council space. The wars, the plague, the economic collapse, the infrastructure failures. He tried to make it clear how desperate the situation had become, how many species were suffering without human help. When he finished, Han was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully, choosing her words with diplomatic precision. "That sounds very difficult. I'm sorry to hear about the troubles you're experiencing. However, I should point out that the Terran Federation withdrew from Council affairs 8 months ago. We're no longer involved in galactic politics. But people are dying," Tajlak protested. "Entire civilizations are collapsing. Surely humanitarian concerns outweigh political differences." Han's expression remained politely neutral. "I understand your concern. However, you'll need to speak directly with Earth about any major policy decisions. I'm only authorized to handle local border matters." She paused, then added something that made Tajlak's blood run cold. "I should mention that we've been quite busy lately. We've received contact from 17 different species in the Andromeda Galaxy. Apparently, our reputation has spread beyond the borders of Council space. We're also in negotiations with the Magellanic Cloud Collective about joint exploration projects in uncharted regions." The message was clear. Humanity had not spent the past 8 months mourning their lost relationship with the Council. They had moved on to bigger and better things. They were making new friends, exploring new territories, and building new alliances that did not include the species that had rejected them. As Tajlak's delegation prepared to leave, Han made one final offer. "We might be able to arrange some limited consulting contracts. Junior staff members, short-term projects, that sort of thing. But any major assistance would need formal approval from Earth, and I understand they're quite busy with other commitments." Flying back to the chaos of Council space, Tajlak finally understood the full scope of their mistake. They had not just lost their problem solvers when they forced humanity out. They had lost their chance to be part of humanity's future among the stars. 1 year had passed since the humans walked away, and Counselor Prime Tajlak was finally making the journey he should have made months ago. His formal diplomatic convoy moved slowly through space that had once been considered the dangerous outer rim of civilization. Now it bustled with activity that took his breath away. They passed a ring world under construction around a red dwarf star, its skeletal framework stretching thousands of kilometers and swarming with construction ships. Massive orbital factories hung in space like artificial moons, their surfaces gleaming with unfamiliar technology. Fleet after fleet of human vessels moved with purpose between installations that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. "By the ancestors," whispered his aide Crix, staring out the viewport. "When did they build all this?" T.H. Lack had no answer. The humans had been busy for the past year, but he had never imagined they were building on this scale. The sheer scope of the construction project suggested they had access to resources and technologies that the Council had never seen before. As they approached Earth, their escorts changed from the patrol ships they had encountered at the border to massive vessels that could have served as flagships for entire Council fleets. The humans were clearly showing off their new capabilities, and the message was impossible to miss. They had moved far beyond anything their former partners could offer. The Earth they approached was different too. New orbital stations surrounded the planet, like a crown of stars. Massive space elevators stretched from the surface to orbital platforms that serve as gateways for interstellar traffic. The planet that had once been humanity's home had become the center of something much larger. Secretary General Lim Wu-bin met them in a conference room that overlooked the bustling spaceports of Geneva. T.H. Lack remembered him as a junior aide who used to carry Ambassador Kim Hanna's briefcase and take notes during meetings. Now he wore the formal robes of Earth's highest diplomatic office, and his manner carried the quiet confidence of someone who held real power. "Counselor Prime Dazlak," Lim said with a warm smile, "welcome to Earth. I hope your journey was comfortable despite the challenging conditions in Council space." The polite way he referred to the chaos consuming half the galaxy made T.H. Lack wince. They both knew that challenging conditions was a diplomatic understatement for the complete collapse of galactic civilization. Secretary General Lim. T.H. Lack began, then stopped. He had prepared a grand speech about mutual cooperation and shared interests, but standing in this room overlooking humanity's thriving civilization, the words seemed hollow and desperate. Instead, he chose honesty. "We made a terrible mistake. The Council needs help, and we're willing to offer anything to get it." Lim listened patiently as T.H. Lack presented their offer: full reinstatement of humanity in the Council with expanded authority, control over all military operations, increased resource allocations, formal apologies from every member species, complete autonomy in handling galactic crises. It was everything the humans might have wanted a year ago, and more. It was also a complete surrender of Council authority to the species they had once tried to control. When T.H. Lack finished, Lim was quiet for a moment, looking out at the streams of ships coming and going from the orbital platforms. Finally, he turned back with that same polite smile. "That's very generous of you," he said. "We'll certainly consider your offer. However, I should point out that we're rather committed to our current partnerships for the next few centuries." He gestured toward a holographic display that showed star maps extending far beyond the galaxy's edge. "Our new friends from Andromeda have some fascinating perspectives on quantum engineering. The Magellanic Cloud Collective has proposed joint exploration projects that will take us to regions of space we never imagined visiting. We're also in negotiations with 3 other galactic clusters that have expressed interest in human expertise." T.H. Lack felt his heart sink. The humans were not just surviving without the Council. They were exploring new frontiers that made their old territory look like a small neighborhood. "Of course," Lim continued, "we understand that you're facing some difficulties. We might be able to arrange limited consulting arrangements. Some of our junior staff members could be available for short-term contracts, emergency medical assistance, basic infrastructure repair, that sort of thing." The offer was insulting in its modesty, and they both knew it. The Council was facing the collapse of galactic civilization, and humanity was offering to send a few recent graduates to help with basic maintenance. "What about the plague?" T.H. Lack asked desperately. "Billions are dying. Surely Dr. Choi or Dr. Shin could help develop a cure." Lim's expression showed genuine sympathy. Dr. Choi is currently leading a medical research expedition to the Andromeda Galaxy. Dr. Shin is establishing disease prevention protocols for our new partners in the Magellanic Clouds. They're both doing very important work that we can't interrupt. The message was becoming painfully clear. Humanity's top experts were no longer available to solve the Council's problems. They had moved on to bigger challenges with partners who valued their contributions. As the meeting ended and Tlac prepared to return to his dying civilization, Lim walked him to the observation deck. Below them, the Earth buzzed with activity as ships loaded with supplies and personnel departed for distant galaxies. "You know," Lim said quietly, "a year ago, Ambassador Kim Hanna would have been honored to help solve these crises. Captain Park would have mobilized his fleets immediately. Dr. Lee would have worked around the clock to fix your infrastructure problems." He paused, watching a massive exploration vessel disappear into hyperspace. "But that was when we thought we were partners in building a better galaxy together. Now, we know we were just employees who could be fired when our methods became inconvenient." Tlac had no response to that. The truth was too painful to acknowledge. Flying back to the chaos of Council space with only minor technical assistance agreements in hand, he finally understood what they had really lost. They had not just thrown away their peacekeepers and problem solvers. They had lost their place in humanity's journey to the stars. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had learned they did not need anyone's permission to explore it.